Dan and Phil. Phil and Dan. Dill? Phan. Welcome to Rewind Time. This episode, Dan and Phil and the Phandom.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
Welcome to episode 32 of Rewind Time, a YouTube history podcast hosted by myself, Max, someone who's YouTube illiterate, and the YouTuber Lucy Livin. Lucy, how are you?
Oh, you know, it's
been a week.
It's been a week. I wasn't expecting as many people. I realized that people have been waiting for the episode, so
we apologize.
That
we ghosted a week.
Our
essentially.
Apology, our truth. Are you getting the format?
I'm getting it. Yeah, we're YouTubers. That
YouTube apology.
I wrote this in a community post, given that I did make one very late today because I was like, I felt like we could just get away with it. You know,
you were like, we're a little podcast.
YouTubers just don't release episodes all the time when they're on a weekly cadence and no one says anything.
No.
But no, it turns out...
You're underestimating the fannies.
Exactly. Or the rewinders.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's be real.
The rewinders.
But yeah, so we're back though this week for what is going to be part 3 of our Dan and Phil series.
A trilogy.
Yes. If you haven't listened to part 1 on Phil and part 2 on Dan, that's on their solo channels respectively, you should go back and listen to those because there will be things that come up today that we will not talk about in detail because they've been covered on previous episodes.
Yes. There's a lot to cover, so I think we're doing our best to kind of highlight what we think are key moments across the Dan and Phil timeline. But they've been busy boys for like a decade, so we won't get to every single little thing. But please, if there's anything of note that you think is interesting, do pop it in the comments. Because I know everyone's got some good lore stored away in those brain cells.
Yeah, this episode is going to be on the channel formerly known as Dan and Phil Games, now known as Dan and Phil. So from my perspective, this was kind of confusing because when Lucy was like, let's do Dan and Phil, and I'd never watched any of their content, I thought that it was going to be like most YouTube, like Smosh, for example, where I'm like, there's going to be a channel called Dan and Phil.
Which is the main channel.
Yes.
And they might have their own like vlog.
Yes.
Really?
And they're going to be doing all their bits on Dan and Phil.
I suppose with the context you have, that would be the logical conclusion. But no. It's not so much like that.
It's kind of it's more like Vlog Brothers in terms of,
Wow,
see, look at I've learned so much. But for those of you that don't know, so you've listened to part 1 and part 2, so you do know, but Dan and Phil Games naturally is a channel where Dan and Phil in 2014 came together and created it to make gaming Let's Play videos. Were you a fan of Dan and Phil Games?
Yes.
At the time?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Were you excited when they made this channel?
I don't know exactly where in the timeline, if I was already watching both of their content individually. I imagine I was watching their content individually, and then they had Dan and Phil Games. We both play video games. So
correct.
Gamers. Hashtag gamer girl. Hashtag
I'm
gamers rise
like
up. Definitely not that.
A gamer with a lowercase g.
Oh.
Like I'm not a capital G gamer.
No.
I'm a chill, cool gamer.
Oh.
Keep it on the down low. Don't talk about it at work. But yeah.
I relate. I feel like, I'm kind of like a casual gamer, but I have like a long gaming history.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like long time gamer with a lowercase g.
We are, I think, actually kind of akin to Dan and Phil in terms of the games we play, which is like mostly single player, not online multiplayer type stuff.
Yeah, except for my brief Overwatch phase.
Oh yeah, well everyone has their addictions, you know. But
yeah, I was excited for the channel. Gaming YouTubers is a little bit of a knowledge gap for me, just because I feel like that's, like the Minecraft community. For anyone who's aware, you're kind of just making
Markiplier.
Yes, Markiplier is a person. Yeah.
Did he do Minecraft videos?
I think everyone did Minecraft videos at some point or another, but like kind of the gaming community is so big. It's almost its own thing.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of kind of like, I would say, key creators in the gaming space, but when people talk about like niche, like gaming stuff, I'm like, I miss that. I didn't watch Let's Plays that much, but obviously anytime one of my favorite creators was like, I'm going to do a gaming video, I'm going to watch it anyway because I watch that content. So I do have a recollection when we were watching the Dan and Phil Games videos. I was like, I don't think I've seen every single one of them, but I'd seen a lot of them. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this video. I had favorite ones. So
Yeah, to give some context, so the type of stuff that they are playing, like in the initial run of the channel in 2014, they opened the first video, it's Donkey Kong for the Wii U, which is a pretty niche pick for games in terms of what you do a Let's Play on. Like Donkey Kong is like not one of the more popular Nintendo characters in the games. Everyone thinks they're very good platformers, but it's not going to be
the
like...
fact that it's the Wii U.
Well, yeah, console.
They were probably one of
maybe
like
6 million people bought.
Yeah, I know. There's not many people with Wii U's.
That's how you know they're real gamers.
Yeah,
you know,
real gamers.
But this establishes the format where you basically have a 30-minute video, and it's you assume multiple hour session that the boys then have edited or edit themselves down into like a 30-minute compilation. It's kind of like what you see Twitch streamers now will do when they release their VODs to YouTube. They do like obviously an 8-hour one for the paying subscribers on Twitch if you're a degenerate and want to watch that. But then all the normies, they just get the condensed version on YouTube, which is the highlights of the stream.
Well, we haven't really covered any gaming creators yet, and maybe we'll do that soon. But like someone like a popular creator like Felix PewDiePie, who PewDiePie, who they are like friends with, his content was, I think, still like that early style of like a really tightly edited Let's Play where it's actually like all the funny moments, it's not, drawn out. So they were just doing their content, I would say, in the style of what was popular at the time.
Yeah, I mean, we should give them some credit.
Oh, yeah.
They are, in the history of YouTube, still quite early to gaming as something that people will watch, right? Like they're not the Smosh of the era, but gaming now on YouTube is way bigger than it was in 2014.
Oh, look, 100%. They've been early adopters kind of all the way through and have had, I would say, like a lot of firsts or like first two or early two kind of trends. But I think, I don't know if they pioneered this format, but I do think they made it their own.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And actually, I want to say, if I may, one of my favorite things about the Dan and Phil Games channel is obviously they kind of started by just doing traditional, what I would say is like traditional Let's Play content where they're just like playing a game and editing that down and they're playing a video game. But they also do, I like their curation and selection of what games they play. You pointed out that Donkey Kong Country isn't like necessarily a super popular game, but they also do like quite a few indie games that I would say aren't necessarily as played as often.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, I think that one was pretty popular.
Yeah, it's an indie game.
Can't wait to meet you. Excited for FNAF 2.
Yeah, I'll be there on the cinema release. It's coming out, I think, the end of this year.
They didn't make it for Halloween?
Well, it hasn't come out yet, so...
FNAFy Christmas. But they also play like board games and like card games and I think things that are, work well with their personality. It seems like they actually are just playing things that they are genuinely interested in.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, as is his nature, makes some comments in some of the live shows where he's like, it was an easy way for us to monetize our hobby.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see that like they actually do, and they talk even about like playing Crash Bandicoot when they first met. So they clearly, have turned their hobby into a monetizable situation, which obviously has its pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, you've done that. How's that feel?
Actually, no, you know what? I was talking about this the other day with a friend of mine who is a creator and he was like, oh, I didn't know you played video games. And I was like, yeah, I really like playing video games. And he was like, oh, you should start streaming and you should, do gaming content. And I was like, no, it is like one of gaming and I think cooking and like baking are probably my two hobbies where I'm like, they're just for me.
Yeah.
I already monetize a lot of my interests.
Yeah. And
my time.
Like, let's not go too far into it.
No.
But in terms of reward versus effort, I think that gaming as a vertical is something where it's incredibly competitive because there's a lot of people that play video games and have the same thought, I can just be a streamer. So it takes a lot of time streaming, a lot of hours before you see anything resembling an income. Like, it's the same. It's kind of like being a podcaster, but I actually think even more hard work. Yeah, it's more competitive.
I think unless you're in sort of a specific niche in gaming where you sort of talk about one sector of games, like, or one genre, I think it is really competitive. And just a little industry hot insider tip. Gaming is one of the verticals or sectors or whatever you want to call it, where the CPM, so the cost per mile, which is cost per 1,000 views, ad rate is one of the lowest across content creation.
Yeah.
So
the advertisers like children are watching these videos and they don't have discretionary income.
Yeah, you're getting like Roblox ads. You know what I mean? No, look, and that's not always the case. Obviously, there are people who are outside of that bell curve. You're kind of higher earners, but typically, from what I've seen, gaming campaigns and things like that, you do get paid less, I would say, than other kinds of creators like finance or beauty or whatever else.
Yeah, so Dan and Phil, in this early era, you mentioned you like the type of games that they are playing.
Yes.
One of the core tenets of this channel, and you mentioned it in your intro, is their playthrough of the Sims series of video games.
You've never played The Sims?
I have played The Sims.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, not ever in a serious way, but I've played it. So
okay.
if you don't know, guys, The Sims is a series of games published by EA where you basically create you can create a family or any sort of like amount. You create little humans and you like run their lives.
It's
right?
a life simulator game. It's like the life simulator game.
There you go. It's a game for girls, guys. Sorry.
No, you need to be careful what you say. You're so naughty. Devil's advocate.
No, on a serious note, The Sims does have obviously a very large female as well as it's very popular with the gays, you know? Makes sense, Dan and Phil will do it. So anyway, okay, guys, EA is potentially being acquired by
I think it's
the
happened,
Saudi.
hasn't it?
It has to. It's a very big acquisition. It's potentially going to be acquired by a consortium which includes the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which means that the Sims fandom, which naturally has concerns about those values being put into the Sims, has been very active in the media, and naturally, a lot of those fans are queer. So
yeah.
So
no. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I think it's more that you just kind of doing the stereotype. But no, to be fair, as someone who plays a lot of, I would say, like stereotyped as like girl games, like I play Animal Crossing, I play Stardew Valley, I play like cozy games, right, which people often associate with being female games or like girls and gay games. You know, however you want to feel about those stereotypes, there's like some truth to it about like what communities enjoy, like, you know, whatever. But yeah, The Sims, I would say, is stereotypically seen as like, look, you know, my like aunt wasn't buying me a copy of like
Call of
FIFA,
Duty.
right? She was buying me a copy of like The Sims 2.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how a lot of us get into games. But yeah, The Sims is massively popular and is really popular on YouTube as well. There's lots of YouTubers or creators who I would say are like Sims creators. So smart market to tap into. But what did you think of the kind of Sims playthrough?
The Sims playthrough. So I think it's funny, and I think it really lends itself to a form of like let's play storytelling, sorry, that makes it good content to watch, because naturally you can make your Sims as characters. And my kind of thing with playing The Sims is I'm kind of like, oh yeah, like, okay, I can like manage the meters, but I'm not really interested in telling a narrative to myself.
We're different
No.
types of gamers.
Yeah, I need like the structure of
You
a
like the
level
linear.
and an objective and the sense of achievement you get in beating it. Whereas people that like The Sims and to a lesser extent games like Minecraft, they're like, I want to express my creativity through the sandbox that the game provides, right?
This is like when we played, I always think the best example is when we played Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just played it like as intended,
Yeah.
I would say.
I beat the game, so yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I can probably count on one hand the amount of games with like a linear story that I've like finished. Because I always just like to, pardon my language, I just like to fuck around. I just did bits in Spider-Man.
Exactly.
For an hour. I accomplished nothing, but I had fun.
That's like perfect for The Sims. That's why I think it is one of their like most returned to games, because it's a great sandbox, and playing it for a streaming audience. Like there are some games like FNAF, which it's really different playing it for viewers who then like get to watch you get jump scared.
Yeah.
The same as they get to watch you in The Sims do like crazy stuff, which is different to just
Slide.
exactly. Different to watching just me do jumps as Mario.
Yeah.
Beating the level. It's
Kind
like,
of,
okay.
kind of boring, I
Yeah,
know.
I agree.
Yeah.
What do you think of The Sims? Like the playthrough, that is.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's actually, you know what? They made so much Sims content that I do think I fell off a little bit. Like at the time when I was watching, I was like, I can't keep up because they were putting out like 30 minutes of Sims a week. And I was also watching other creators. Like I wasn't a dedicated like only Dan and Phil.
Okay, for context, broadly, neither of us watch gaming YouTube.
Yes, I should clarify.
At least let's play games.
No, it's not really my
No.
exact preferred kind of YouTube. But I was subscribed to Dan and Phil Games, and I would somewhat like irregularly, like I would tune in kind of as I saw things that I was like keen on.
Well, I do think they do a more engaging version of the Let's Play where because you have the context of Dan and Phil as a duo, they do things like Dan versus Phil,
I
where
love that
they
series,
would
yeah.
compete against each other in competitive games, and then you have a scoreboard in the Dan and Phil room where they're filming, and you can see over time like who's on top, Dan or Phil, who wins more games. Like when they play Buzz, which we watched them do in 2015, you're like invested not only because you're just watching the video and you're like, oh, you know, I know trivia answers, how would I go against Dan and Phil? But you're like, well, whoever wins this will get to put their thing on the board and be ahead in the competition.
And it's just honestly, so much of what makes this content work is the Dan and Phil dynamic, the famed Dan and Phil dynamic of kind of a more, like I'm cautious of just like doing the stereotype of what they are because I know how this conversation is going to evolve throughout this episode. But you know, you have, like your, like how do they even describe it in that one special? Like you have these sort of like grumpy sort of one versus your kind of like silly person. But then I would say like Dan also has like a very playful side as well. They just bounce off each other very well.
Yeah, I do think it'd be really interesting if you found the fan who was like, oh, I don't enjoy their solo content that I love.
They exist.
Dan and Phil games.
I
there
was,
you go.
I feel like, was that person we met at a party?
Whoa,
I swear, okay, real life example, we were talking about Dan and Phil and then someone mentioned it. And then we were having a conversation about how we found them. I swear there are people who were like, I started watching Dan and Phil because of Let's Plays, because there are people who only watch, like, or primarily watch gaming content. So for some people, their introduction to Dan and Phil was like Dan and Phil play Five Nights at Freddy's, which is insane to me, but I also understand. Like,
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah, totally
From
makes
a
sense.
subscriber perspective, though, it's like Dan and Phil together, I think, have less subs than either of the solo channels. Definitely less than Dan's channel.
Yeah. But no, I think I broadly enjoy. I really like the Just Dance video or videos. I think those are fun. Anything where they're kind of doing something a little bit outside of just like sitting at the computer. I enjoy those. I like the what's the one where they play? It's like a board game. It's like a retro board game where you date boys. That kind of came later after they had both like come out on YouTube.
It's like the Mattel.
It's like a old school like game that you play at like a girl's sleepover where it's like which boy will you date, but they're obviously playing it as gay men, which I think is very funny. And it's like really outdated and has like illustration of like photos of the boys. It's just funny. They did a few episodes of that. That is a good series as well. But yeah, I broadly really like Dan and Phil games as a result of me liking Dan and Phil. But how about you?
Yeah, it's a thing where I can appreciate it for what it is, but personally, whenever I watch Let's Play game content, I'm always like, well, I could just play the game myself.
Yeah.
Some people are like, well, it's like a passive experience versus like an active experience. So like I'm tired after work. I don't want to play the game. I want to watch someone else do it, which I appreciate, but is not for me.
Yeah, for me, I think the gaming content I most enjoy is a more transformative type of gaming content or a more edited type of gaming content that exists as its own piece of content rather than... Like, I don't really watch, like, streamers that often. I have massive respect for them and I think they do great work, but it's just not the type of content that I like to consume. But something like video game donkeys... videos that are like more like reviews or commentary analysis, or really cut down. Like he is, you know, clearly played the game for like 10 hours and then cut it down into like 8 minutes. And, you know, that is a very different thing. But yeah.
There are 2 gaming YouTubers, one of whom we'll cover quite soon on this podcast, who I've ever watched in a serious way. And they both do the Dan and Phil method of cutting down long streaming sessions into like a 20-minute highlight video. And that I can do because I'm like, well, yeah, it's like, and same as Donkey. It's like, oh, it's closer to like an episode of a show.
It's similar to watching, like, I don't really watch like react to YouTubers. Like,
yeah, I'm glad.
No, okay. No, there are some, if someone has though, like if you are, so I, have watched like Vocal Coach reacts to something where they've got like an insight or an education that they can layer in.
Okay, yeah.
But if someone's just like watching a piece of media and they're just like not really commenting, it's not very like transformative. I won't like, that's not my thing.
When you said react, I'm thinking of the disparaging use of it, like where you do just watch someone else's video and steal the ad revenue.
Oh yeah, not a fan.
Vocal Coach reacting to something is just like the same as her critiquing it, but they're just doing YouTube meta,
They're just doing a format. Yeah. But anyway.
So there are obviously a lot more gaming videos on this channel, but given the format of them is largely the same, I don't think we're going to go too deep into anymore. But suffice to say, they continue through until the Dan hiatus. But there are also hiatus. There are other videos on the channel, especially earlier on in its history, that I thought were quite worth talking about. There is a video where they get an image like altering app which lets you morph people's faces, and it was just like the people they pick. It is Smosh, and you're like, okay, sprinkle of glitter. Shout out Louise, friend of the pod, and PewDiePie, their real life friend.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, like I get, like, yeah, they're like, well, you know them, but also they're popular YouTubers, so you can leverage them in the thumbnail and just edit their faces. And you're like, okay, I see the formula here because we get a extension of this sort of thing, but it's the video YouTubers play the 7-second challenge.
Yes, which Phil actually created.
Shout out, Phil.
Shout out, Phil.
The 7-second challenge, can you just tell people who aren't aware what it is?
It is a challenge, and it's just that you have to do something within 7 seconds.
Correct. Yeah.
Literally what it is. I think he came up with it. Oh, gosh, and someone might fact check me on this, but I think he came up with it and he did like a video about it, and then it became a trend because there's a really big thing on YouTube of like challenges, Chubby Bunny challenge, what's in my mouth challenge, waxing my leg, like all these different like challenges. That was like the meta.
Yeah,
for
so
YouTube.
the 7-second challenge, Phil made it, and then it became an app, and then of course, like a lot of people just played it based on the app, right?
Yeah. Imagine we have a timeline where instead of everyone playing Heads Up by Ellen DeGeneres, they play 7-second challenge.
The 7-second challenge, someone has gone on the Phandom wiki, shout out the Phandom PH wiki, over 1,000 pages. Best wiki since the Annoying Orange episode. And
the Annoying Orange wiki is my Roman Empire. It's
they actually went through and they catalogued every single prompt in the 7-second challenge app because it was discontinued in 2018. There are over 500. One of them being, you're a dying iPhone. What are your last words?
Bye.
Yeah, so that's the 7-second challenge, guys. Anyway, back to the
You're gonna
YouTube
put the
video.
counter on the video.
The people that they feature in this, it's probably the most stacked YouTuber cast of a video we've seen so far. For guys that are always like, oh yeah, we like don't go outside. It's like, well, everyone from YouTube submitted or you captured them playing the 7-second challenge. I'm going to go through and read them. Skip 30 seconds ahead if this is very boring. But Anthony from Smosh, Sprinkle of Glitter, Markiplier, Phil, Kick the PJ, It's Way Past My Bedtime, Hank Green, John Green, Ingrid Nielsen, Live Lava Live, Jack from Jack and Dean, Dean from Jack and Dean, Catarific, Crabsticks, Brandon Bowen, Benny from the Fine Bros, Raffy from the Fine Bros, It's Grace, My Hatu, who's Hannah Hart, and then is it her sister?
Mamrie Hart.
Mamrie Hart, yes. Tom Scar, Dan's there, and then at the end it's Matsuya and PewDiePie in what looks like Dan and Phil's apartment, which is friendship confirmed.
Oh, I thought you were about to talk about the apartment.
No.
Well,
Not yet.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it's like they captured them
call
like
him
in situ.
Felix.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, everyone knows his name is
We've
Felix.
already said they're friends, yeah.
Yeah, but
just-
it's funny when they go, there's a couple of videos across their channels and stuff where they occasionally refer to him and they're just like, oh yeah, well when we hung out with Felix. And I'm like, well yeah, that's what you would call someone who you're actually like acquainted and like friendly with, rather than being like
Bjorn speaks his first words and it's Phan is real. Bjorn is their kid for you guys.
Bjorn is PewDiePie's kid. Not invoking Bjorn in the episode. Anyway, Bjorn versus Ottilie.
Sorry.
What is it? Ottilie? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ottilie Roo?
The thing is,
Brick
obviously
crew babies.
PewDiePie from memory is like big in this thumbnail, and obviously everyone puts PewDiePie in thumbnails because it's like clickbait.
Yeah,
so it is
respect.
kind of suspenseful when we're watching the video. I'm like, oh, where's PewDiePie? And then he is there at the end,
Yeah.
biggest YouTuber at the time.
Not clickbait.
No, not clickbait. There is another different format video on this channel that is worthy of mention, because having watched a lot of these videos recently, this format of videos for this podcast, it tickled me especially. And it's the Draw My Life for Dill Howlter, who is their main sim character. And of course, it's the normal Draw My Life format where it's someone filming and drawing like a little animation for the YouTube video, but it's in Simlish.
Menzie, Bonica 2.
So yeah, it's like it's full played at like face value, Draw My Life, but by Dill in Simlish. It's like a parody of Draw My Life,
It's pretty funny.
which we haven't seen so far. Everyone does their Draw My Lives like pretty po-faced, and it's kind of, as someone who watched a lot of Draw My Life recently, I'm like, oh, it's good to see that someone was like, this is rife for parody.
Yeah, especially because they both did a Draw My Life,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
We're gonna do a Draw My Life.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd
okay.
be so
everyone,
funny.
just so you know, obviously, context for the pod for anyone who's new or listening. I have a YouTube channel, and Max was saying that when I hit a particular milestone, I should do a Draw My Life. In our Lord's Year of 2025, Max was like, "It's
would be
time
so
for you to do
retro.
a Draw My Life."
Imagine people seeing the sub notification, Lucy Livin,
Draw my life. Oh my god.
Anyway, guys,
Oh,
if you think
God.
that would be funny, let me know.
I'm not
But
sure about that.
there is another like collaboration on this channel that is relevant to creators that we have spoken about before, and it's specifically Dan and Phil and PJ and Charlie play Lethal Company, and this is notable because it features Charlotte McDonnell, who used to be a YouTuber under the handle charlieissocoollike, and is probably the biggest of the original Brit YouTuber wave. In terms of what I describe it, that was she was the first British YouTuber to hit 1 million subscribers.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. She was a big deal. I was subscribed.
Yeah.
I am subscribed, I suppose, but yeah.
Is someone who I'm not sure if we did on the pod, but we'll do it now, have obviously discussed covering, but
Yeah.
Charlotte transitioned after making the majority of her YouTube content. So not only is that old content privated, there's an extra element where it's like, it's just a
she's
tough.
she's chosen to private that content
Yes.
for whatever like reason, and that's it's a bit of a different energy to someone who's like privating a video because like they did brown face.
Yeah.
Like it's just a different thing, and it's but I was and am a huge fan of Charlotte. I think she is a really, really talented creator. But yeah, it was one we've just been sitting on and thinking about how we if or how.
I think it was Dan in potentially his Draw My Life or another video talking about his inspirations on YouTube. That channel was one that he listed as being one of the reasons he started.
And Natalie Tran.
Yes. See, very influential. We'll think about this one. One of the sort of seasonal events that the channel participates in each year and has actually recently revived is Spooky Week, which is naturally the week of Halloween, and they play spooky games like FNAF and the like, games designed to elicit obviously like jump scares, which makes for
Yeah, they just play
very
spooky
good
games.
watching. Yeah, but
Spooky
also
Week.
they dress up in Halloween costumes. The set is decorated in Halloween style.
Yes, and there is, I feel like we should mention this because technically, I think they sort of do this content across the individual channels, but they also do baking videos on Den and Phil Games. So recently they've done a Halloween baking video. I don't know if they've done that back in the history. I'll be real, guys, it's getting a little confusing because like obviously there's like Dan and Phil content on Dan's channel, Dan and Phil content on Phil's channel, and then the combined Dan and Phil content on the Dan and Phil channel, and we've watched a lot of it in the last like month, I would say. So it's all kind of blurring together in my mind, and I was like sick for 2 of those weeks. So I'm in a bit of a fugue Dan and Phil state. But yeah, I love the themed content. I love their specials. I think it's actually really something special to have a series or a piece of content that has like almost appointment viewing or like event status on a platform that like YouTube, which now, you know, algorithmically just kind of serves things up to you in not necessarily always a timely way. So it's pretty special to be creators where people like getting excited for like it's spooky week, or, you know, for like Zoella, it's like her Christmas vlogs. It's coming soon. I'm so excited. So yeah.
The other sort of enduring thing of note that I wanted to talk about, because I don't understand it, is I would describe them as the main sponsor of Dan and Phil Games.
The main payer of the
Faust, the mortgage.
The Faust mortgage.
Yeah. Is the dragon breeding game Dragon City.
Not breeding game.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it is. It is. Dragon City.
Yeah.
Have you played Dragon City?
I had never even heard of Dragon City.
I actually haven't played Dragon City. We should start. Oh my gosh, we should start playing Dragon City. I'll email
Absolutely
Dragon
not.
City and see if they can.
Absolutely not.
You're saying you wouldn't let Dragon City sponsor the podcast?
Well, like Dan and like you not wanting to monetize gaming, I don't want to monetize the podcast, you know?
That is not
I'm
true.
doing it for the love of the game.
That is not true. You just want me to be the Phil in this scenario. You just want me to do the ad read, and
That
you
makes
can
sense,
be
yeah.
like, oh, I'm just letting Lucy do the ad read. But you also
I don't think we could do a serious read. This is why Phil is so good at what he does, because I don't know if I could do a serious read for Dragon City. What it is,
I could
guys,
do it.
is free. It's free to play. It was originally a Facebook game, but now it's obviously on phones. And yes, you do collect and breed dragons to make better dragons. But they have sponsored Dan and Phil Games since 2015. And it is a continuing, ongoing relationship where they have sponsored them basically until the present day. And they have like items in game that reference Dan and Phil stuff, like niche, like the golden pig is in the game, and it's just like
there's a Flame Susan as well as like there's like Dragon City lore with it. There's like a subcategory. I'm sure they have it on the wiki where there's like Dan and Phil lore, and then a subsect of that is just like the Dragon City memes. They even reference it in some of their live shows, which we're about to talk about. Like Dragon City truly is kind of woven into the fabric of Dan and Phil in quite a
there's a
way.
fan dragon in the game, which is just a dragon with two
emo.
heads, and it's like a blonde and a brunette. Like kind of has their likeness, but it's also like what looks like clip art dragon. So it's
I'm
shout
obsessed.
out. It must be a successful game because they have the ad budget to pay these guys for 10 years, and they're clearly driving engagement with the game. So
I don't think I've ever seen. I can't think of another YouTuber who's sponsored by Dragon City. I think it would actually be extremely funny if they allocate like 100% of their influencer marketing budget
to Dan
and Phil. But they also have, so they do integrations, which is, sorry, I'm using my marketing language. They do integrations, which is like kind of your typical ad within a YouTube video. That's like, you know, a minute and a half long within the video. But Dragon City also do like what I would describe as like dedicated sponsored videos where the sponsorship is woven like in and out of like a whole 20-minute episode. So
Yep.
there's like a little 2-minute section at the front about Dragon City, and then a little bit in the middle, and then a bit at the end. And so they had like a video where they made like mocktails. I think it must have been mocktails because it had to be brand friendly because brands don't like it when you put alcohol and stuff, and YouTube too. But the entire thing had like, I'm pretty sure it was Dragon City woven through, and they had a few videos like that where they're like Dragon City themed videos.
Oh, there's many. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
It's not just like, oh, and the sponsor is Dragon City, and then we
No.
go back to the video. There's fully just videos that are like
They're like
dragons.
dressed as dragons.
Would you? Would you dress as a dragon if we were?
If it was paying my mortgage, yeah. Wouldn't have a choice. Is that or homelessness? Phil was solo creating. Anyway, so look, it's a great example of Dan and Phil taking something that a lot of YouTubers put in perfunctory amount of effort.
Yeah.
And just they add, a touch of, they elevate it to something that's actually interesting to watch.
Getting your audience to be enthusiastic about Dragon City, like people like the Dragon City narrative or like continuing memes, that's pretty powerful. There are not many creators or people who can do that, I would say.
It brings us nicely to another thing where everyone does it, and I think it's kind of played out not very interesting, but these guys managed to execute it in a very successful way, and that is the channel Dan and Phil Crafts.
Don't cry. Craft.
So if you don't know, and I know we said this was about Dan and Phil games, but we're going to lump it in here.
I think
It doesn't deserve its own episode.
technically, well, some people on the wiki might disagree. I think this episode is more broadly about like Dan and Phil
Yeah.
as a partnership, and then kind of that wider conversation about the fandom, which we've sort of tried to hold off from getting too into until this ep. But yeah.
So Dan and Phil Crafts on the 1st of April 2015, April Fool's Day, they created the channel and uploaded the first video, and it is
Square Flakes.
a sort of parody of the craft type of video that was popular on YouTube in the mid-2010s. You might be familiar with the later version slime tutorials. What do you mean?
Slime tutorials.
You know how like okay, to describe it, camera is set up facing someone at a desk. They have all the craft stuff in front of them, and then they make slime, right?
Oh, you're talking about actual slime tutorials.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like how to make slime.
Oh. I thought you meant slime tutorials, which is the language that people use for
musical theatre.
parody musical theatre.
No one thought that.
I think anyone, if you comment below on the YouTube video or even on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, when Max said it's like slime tutorials, if you also, like me, thought he was talking about like a pirated version of Heather's, then let me know. I was so confused for a moment. I was like, how is it like piracy? Okay, sure.
And yeah, like
it's like a craft tutorial. Yes.
It's a parody of those types of videos. It is incredibly successful because the channel has 4 videos but 700,000 subscribers. And as you said when I introduced it, the phrase "don't cry, craft" became like a YouTube meme that you're probably better equipped to say how that spread.
Well, so that one I think became a meme, and then so they only uploaded like once every year on April Fool's Day. So then the following year they did another one, and they introduced the concept of pro tip, where they would just say pro tip, and then they would say their tip. Pro tip became this like a plague in the YouTube comments in every video. And I remember this happening at the time. It was like under every video, it was like pro tip. And it was like Dan and Phil fans like invading just other random YouTubers' comments and doing pro tip, and everyone like upvoting it. So it was like the top comment on like every video was like pro tip. And so all of these YouTubers who didn't know what was going on were like what is this? And also people kind of being like, who are these like annoying like emo boys from the UK, and like why does everyone keep commenting like pro tip? So that was really funny. But yeah,
the videos, so the initial 3 are it's 2015 to 2017, and then there is a break, and eventually you get the return to Dan and Phil Crafts in 2024, which I don't think people were expecting at all, because obviously that was a significant lapse. But basically the final one following the ending of the 2017 video, from recollection, Dan and Phil are in prison because it's like appears like in the preceding one that they've like poisoned Phil or something happens. Like I can't quite remember, but Dan and Phil are in jail in the new one, and you're like weird. And then halfway through they bust out of jail and the tutorial stops, and then they are like running through the woods. And
it's like analog horror.
It's like Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
And it ends with Phil like being sacrificed to a demon.
Yeah, and they have like a full like prosthetic, like spooky like antler, like Yellow Jackets Antler King situation. It's pretty crazy.
It's very like Lonely Girl 15.
Yeah, which actually I think Phil said was one of his YouTube influences early on. But yeah, it's good. I also love all the early episodes. They seem to film it on like an iMac, like it looks like shit. That is also just really funny to me because
Lonely Girl 15's influence.
Yeah, they're making it very like lo-fi. And they're also, I feel we need to mention, I'm sure all the fans know, but like the crafts are really stupid. Square flakes, they look horrible. Like the paper snowflakes, but they're just squares, so they don't look anything. They're just squares with holes in them. Actually cracks me up. So funny. And you know what? Who else is doing this? Not many other YouTubers. Not many other YouTubers are like, I'm going to like fuck around and make like a prank channel, like a fake craft channel, like parody, and do it like once a year. And like I actually think they are pretty, I don't want to say singular because I think other creators do this, but they're pretty unique in that they do these sort of creative projects, which are, you know, a bit experimental or kind of just like because they think it would be funny.
I think they're just very good at, it's actually world building, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, which is not something we talk about a lot with YouTubers. Because I think like the impulse is like, well, I have to just keep creating new content, and my old content, I'm often embarrassed or ashamed of it, so I private it in a lot of cases. But these guys, it's like the approach is, and maybe they're not doing this, like they're doing it intuitively, or maybe they are much more considered about it, but they're like, no, we're adding new pieces to like the wider Dan and Phil lore. And I think they have to be doing it intentionally because a lot of the live shows are built on like remixing or referencing parts of the lore. And obviously the Dan and Phil fans are all really into that. So I think you're thinking, no?
I think it's not that I don't agree that they're doing it intentionally, but I think, you know, maybe that implies that it's sort of like, oh, I want to like, you know, add a new thing to our thing. Whereas I actually honestly think that Dan and Phil probably are just like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we did this? And like, rather than, I think some creators or YouTubers who like kind of have their professional like success on YouTube and they're like, oh, well, I don't need to do that because that's like not going to make money for me, or that's like not a good use of my time or whatever. I think they actually do try new creative projects. I think that's sort of what I feel like. I don't know. I kind of like it. Like it's very, to me, there are some creators who I feel like they were not born to be a YouTuber, but like we talk about kind of natural YouTubers or people where you're like, oh yeah, I so understand why this is like their career. And it's like, if you are someone who is creative and you have these ideas where it's like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if like, there's like a playfulness there that I don't think a lot of YouTubers engage with in the same way, where they're like, what if I did a different format? What if I just did this like creative project just because I think it would be creatively fulfilling? Like they wouldn't have made money on Dan and Phil Crafts, like because they only upload like once a year. They wouldn't have made money for the first.
Yeah, it was very successful though.
No, it was very successful. But like
it's easy to be doing moonshots when all your content hits.
Yeah, okay. Well, there is that element as well. But I think some YouTubers kind of get to a point and they go, okay, well, I'm really successful, so I don't have to do extra stuff because I can just like, because it's work. Like that comeback to Dan and Phil Crafts, where they basically made like a spooky short film, would have been a lot of work in like putting together the prosthetic spooky thing and like finding a location and like kind of conceptualizing how that was going to go. And I think a lot of YouTubers or creators generally would just be like, yeah, can't be bothered. Like that's silly. So I think, I don't know, I think there's something in that I find really admirable and very endearing, which I think you do too. I think we just, phrased it in different ways. But I know what you mean. If you are a extremely successful YouTuber, then yes, you can afford to spend the time doing other things because you know, that AdSense be popping already.
Well, it was in this era. Around this time, so post of our Dan and Phil Crafts, Dan and Phil Gaming is going well. The boys did go on their second live world tour, which was Interactive Introverts.
We did talk about the first live tour in our previous episodes.
Yes.
Briefly.
This one is actually kind of hard to cover because it's not available for streaming in Australia. And I, of course, looked and was like, can I watch this somewhere? And people were like, well, yes, you could solicit a copy from your local library. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not doing that. So I watched the song that they perform in this one, which is sort of a combination of Phil rapping and then Dan does like a ballad and Phil raps in between it. And it's much like the Amazing Tour, where it is very much self-referential. The Phil rap is actually probably my favorite of the things we watch, because it is naturally we've talked about how Phil is the more PG of the pair, and in recent years Phil's been unshackled, and like they joke that he's allowed to swear now, and the Phil rapping character is a real send up of like a lot of like the Phil tropes, like, you know, ones we even address, you know, same hair for 10 years, etc., etc. And there's even explicit lines where it's like, yeah, he can't swear because he doesn't want the video to be demonetized, which, relatable, you know.
Relatable content.
Had to earn the money.
I do be saying the F word on this podcast and not in my videos.
You. I know.
You try.
I know.
You try and stop me.
Well, you notice I don't use profanity. Anyway, so yeah, this show was in 2018, and in 2019, Dan released his coming out video. Phil did as well, of course, but Dan's was followed by a hiatus from YouTube. So for 3 years, he wasn't on his personal channel, and the Dan and Phil Games channel was also on hiatus. This, you know, I think a lot of people at the time were like, this is essentially the end of Dan and Phil Games.
Or the Dan and Phil combined brand. Because during this time, Phil continued to upload. And yeah, it's just been a bit patchworky how we've talked through this, because we talked about a bit on the Phil episode, a bit on the Dan episode. But yes, I remember not maybe totally realizing, like I was aware of the hiatus, but I also, I think, was maybe at a point where I was not watching, I still watch a lot of YouTube, but I wasn't watching YouTube as much as I was, because I was at uni and like I was working. So I wasn't like probably as cognizant of like upload schedules and things. And I would say upload schedules generally are less of a thing than maybe they used to be on YouTube, like just with the way YouTube's platform is. YouTube used to like be very subscription box driven. We've talked about this on the pod in some previous episodes, whereas now it's kind of like homepage, like people just go to this, basically your For You page or whatever, and you're kind of served up stuff that YouTube thinks you'll like. So I think people are less, and this could be just me, but I feel like I notice less when someone hasn't uploaded as much.
Oh, that's why I'm like, we can just skip an episode of the podcast. Like,
no, but you have, but then you got your true fans coming and being like, "Where are you?"
Yeah.
So obviously there were
is a bit like that.
Obviously there were fans who were being like, "Where are the uploads? We miss you guys." Especially considering they have a very large and very dedicated fandom.
Yeah, it was also a case that there wasn't like a goodbye video. There was just no uploads for essentially 4 years.
Yeah, they did a Christmas, a holiday Sims video, and then nothing.
Yeah, so it was a dark time for the fandom, specifically if you like the Dan and Phil or Dan solo content, because there wasn't a lot of it. But naturally, Dan did return to YouTube, ironically with the Why I Left YouTube video. But then he did start making his own content again. And Phil has spoken about how during that time he was like, have you thought about maybe we can do more content together again? I think our fans are a bit more chill. And of course, over time, that turned out to work, and Dan returned to Dan and Phil Games, and they posted a video 2 years ago. It's just called Saying Goodbye Forever. And you're like, oh, well, this is the closure of the channel, and they're just doing it officially. Now that Dan has returned to YouTube, I believe it was post Dan's like official YouTube return, they're being like, okay, we're back, but we're not doing Dan and Phil Games anymore. What do you think of this video? So this video, I'll give you, it's another like a film sketch, but it is of the two boys at in a church, as if there's a funeral and there's a casket. And they're there for the funeral for Dan and Phil Games. And then there is who's the
I
celebrant
think it's
or the mourner?
Jacksepticeye.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
is.
sure it's Jacksepticeye.
And
Who's
so
a big YouTuber.
I knew his user. I don't know anything about him though.
Big gaming YouTuber.
Wow. So it makes sense because it was Dan and Phil Games.
Yes. You're so right.
But the end of this video is very funny, and the green Sims selector icon, which if you've played The Sims, it's very iconic. It's actually, isn't it on the logo?
Yeah.
Yeah. It appears over the coffin, and then a very large Dill Howlter emerges from the coffin and is like, he looks like paper mache. I'll include an image for our
I think
our video
it's the same
viewers.
one that was in the tour, The Amazing Tour Is Not on Fire, where the reveal is that Dill is controlling the internet.
I'll take your word for it.
Do you not remember?
No.
What? Okay. Yeah, there's like a reveal because you know how it's like Phil broke the internet by putting his laptop in the microwave. That's the concept of the show. The framing is very like not really the most important thing, but the reveal is like Dill is like the mastermind, the kind of villain, and they convert. I might be the same Dill, might be a different Dill, but it makes sense if they had a giant paper mache Dill head lying around.
Yeah, and then like the video comes back and Dill chases Dan and Phil, and it ends, and it's like Dan and Phil Games is back.
Yeah. And
Let's
then they're
go.
back.
And yeah, and then it's literally like the next video back is them playing Heartthrob, which is that board game you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the title
And-
is Dan and Phil Are Dating Boys, which given they have recently come out is obviously funny.
Yes, and then they're back to playing spooky games. They're playing FNAF. They're doing baking videos for Spooky Week, and it is basically from a content perspective, return to what we were doing before Dan and Phil went on hiatus. But I do want to talk about. I do think there is a distinct content shift post hiatus, where, especially now that both of the boys are out, where and they've also recognized that their audience has grown up. There is a more, I would say more mature, but naturally, is it more mature when there's just some more explicit content in terms of the like they're less PG is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of there's a lack of self-censoring because maybe previously, and we will get into it, I think previously where they've been like, not only from like a censorship or like a YouTube like monetization perspective where they're like, oh, we just don't want to talk about stuff because like it's not really our brand, or maybe Phil's brand or whatever, right? It's not their joint brand. It's not family friendly. It's not commercially friendly. Not saying that it should be like that, but just on platform, people are pretty careful about what they talk about. There's also a case of, oh, well, if we talk about certain things, it invites certain, like if they talk, for example, about, like if they played a dating game pre-hiatus,
Yep.
they would obviously be inviting people's speculation about, like if they're making comments about whether or not they find a particular person attractive or what they like in a partner or something like that, that invites, you know, speculation about their sexuality or whatever, right? So they kind of stay away from basically broaching those topics, kind of in like a, almost in like a Smosh or like Mr. Beast kind of way, where it's like if we just don't talk about those concepts, then, you know, we don't have to kind of grapple with our fans interfacing with those concepts. Now, did it actually stop the fans from doing that? No, but, you know, given that fans would grapple onto any kind of morsel of them talking about, you know, dating or whatever, they just didn't really, it was just sort of like a topic that they just didn't touch. But now, you know, post coming out, they're kind of referencing the fact that they are gay and they like men and that they can actually freely talk about it. And yeah, it is a distinct shift in vibe, I would say. Do you think that's an accurate
I agree.
reading? Yeah.
And it plays up where we now get Dan and Phil reacting to a lot of their older content, and you get the additional insight where they can now be like, oh, well, we're doing this because, or they lampoon things like, oh, we were in our straight era, right? Naturally, we now get that again because, spoilers, but they've revealed that they were in a relationship the whole time. So they get a second bite of the cherry. But it means that we get to watch them react to a lot of the videos that we watched on this channel for this YouTube series. Specifically, they react to all of the Phil is not on fire. Especially, it's very funny because we were watching it like 2 weeks ago being like, why is he tackling a man like that?
Why is he like nuzzling into his...
Just two boys hanging out being
Just two
bros?
boys hanging out. Can we talk about this? Like are we at the point where we can talk about the Dan and Phil are in a relationship? No, we're not.
No, we still have to talk about terrible influence.
Okay. All right. I'll hold my...
Yeah, and there's other stuff, like they go back to doing ads for Dragon City. They release a lo-fi beats album, which is like Creative Commons, so like people can use it on their like YouTube stuff. And create
that's
it.
really cool.
You should use it on some of your content instead of the Wii menu music, which I'm sure is copyrighted.
Everyone uses it, but no, I do think about that sometimes.
And then we get them reacting to The Amazing Dan, his first video. Can you do the opening for us?
Hi, my name is Dan.
He really doesn't like... I literally am like, that's not that bad. Like,
No, I get it.
He's like, it's cringe. Yeah. I'm like...
I don't know. If I pulled up the video that you made 15 years ago...
Yeah, probably way cringier.
Well, yeah, but you'd find it difficult. I don't find them cringe. I think it's endearing. But if we were to play that video of you singing at that one...
Oh, my home videos?
Well, no,
that's very different to...
Okay, but it's like
if we were to watch young Lucy Livin videos...
I mean...
Do you think it wouldn't be what... Well, maybe it would be.
I don't know.
You go on
maybe I think I'm more Phil coded. Like I'm sort of embarrassed by them, but I also think I'm like, that was like 7 years ago, and so like it's embarrassing, but like not that embarrassing. I don't know.
I mean, importantly, they react to my favorite video, A Day in the Life of Phil and Dan, which is the one I described as gay peep show. But no, they're watching it, and for reference, this is the one where it's them in their original apartment, and they
where they dox themselves.
Yeah, well, that's the point of this video. They acknowledge, and I didn't really put it together when we watched it because I was like, oh, they're just showing their house, like whatever. Naturally, I wouldn't be like, oh, I could find out where they live because that's crazy. But they're like, well, yes, we filmed not only the outside of our apartment, but the entry and like the courtyard
and the
outside.
view from their window.
Yeah, so immediately fans would just arrive and be like, hi Dan, hey Phil, which is like not the outcome you wanted. But then naturally there's other stuff in this video where we were like, this is funny because Phil literally says, he's like, I look older in this video than I do now. Because if you haven't seen Phil recently, he is gone through what he describes
Blonde.
as twink rebirth, where he's just like blonde with somewhat tousled curly hair compared to like the iconic emo look that he sported for like 10
the jet
years.
black dye is crazy.
It just never makes anyone look young, you know? Have you ever seen a baby with like jet black hair that's that pale? Like,
he's slaying.
Yeah, but just the fact that they were like, this, like the lessons they learned from this, where it's like, oh, we actually have to be incredibly mindful of protecting our own privacy because if we show anything, there are enough people who are so invested in the channel, they will like camp outside our house, which is quite scary.
I do also just want to make a footnote that in both of their coming out videos, actually no, it's I think only in Dan's coming out video, he does reference his relationship to Phil as being more than soulmates. So just from POV as someone who like watched them for a really long time, in this, Dan is acknowledging like there was our relationship of some kind. Because I think he uses some other language as well, which infers there's some type of romantic relationship, but doesn't actually be like we are dating or we were dating.
Yeah,
he just
I know.
says like
people contextualize it as that, but maybe I'm just dumb. I wouldn't necessarily have made those conclusions from that video.
in terms of
Well, I'm kind of like you, where you're like, I mean, I guess it makes sense they're in a relationship, but they just said they were friends, so I trust. Why would they lie to us?
yeah.
I'm more like that.
No, I'm taking that reading from this is how fans reacted to it, in that they were like, well, he's acknowledging the existence of this relationship between the two of them being more than friendship, but not necessarily putting a timeline on it or putting a label on what it was or what it is now. He's just sort of saying like meeting him, and was a big moment for me, and like kind of leaving it at that, which, and I'm just bringing it up because we're going to eventually get to later. But just at this point, until very recently, I basically was like, Dan is sort of inferring that maybe there was some type of relationship, that whatever it is, they're very important people to each other and they are choosing not to disclose that. I am not, like, it's not for me to know. That kind of was my POV as a fan of both of them. I was just like, I know there's stuff going out there. I know there's like rumors. I know there's conspiracy theories and stuff like that. I did at one point kind of go down that rabbit hole on Tumblr, and then I was just like, I remember just being like, this is weird. I need to get out of this.
Okay, we need to hold it. We will
I
get
know,
there.
I know,
We'll get
but
there.
I'm just setting the scene
Yes.
for, at this point in time, there was sort of still quite a lot of like fervent speculation, and it didn't necessarily stop it. But for me, Dan's like being genuine, his acknowledgement of this, I was just like, cool, I'm going to take him at his word. Like I have no reason not to. I don't find them to be, there are some creators who are quite like famously deceitful to their fans or like whatever. No, sorry, but like that, it's a thing. I'm like, they've chosen to say what they want to say, and I like, okay, that's that.
I will say things that didn't help is uploading videos called something like finally revealing our secret in 2024. And then it is actually them just announcing their next live tour. So they certainly have, and we've talked about this previously, they love clickbait, and they do actually, they mock themselves in this show about this concept.
Yeah.
They do love clickbait, insinuating things about Phan, which is naturally not what the video is about.
Right. So let's talk about Terrible Influence.
Terrible Influence.
Currently
The
their
third
most
Dan
recent
and Phil live tour.
I should have gone. I don't know why I didn't go.
I mean, you probably just
I
didn't know.
didn't. It wasn't
right?
on my radar at the time,
Yeah.
and now in hindsight, we both watched this. They put it up for free on their
Yes.
Dan and Phil Games channel. Shout out. What did you think of this tour overall? This show compared to the other one?
Naturally, it's their third show, so they've had a lot of practice. Dan also has done his solo comedy show, so they're, in terms of our YouTube live performers who are still YouTubers and not like crossed over into other artists, like they have a lot of experience, and I think that this is easily the best Dan and Phil live show.
Yeah, I agree.
I think for a few reasons. I think that they are conscious that they have a lot of fans that are obviously very well versed in the Dan and Phil lore, but there are also people like yourself who are more like casual Dan and Phil viewers. And there's even people that are at the show that maybe haven't watched Dan and Phil in a long time. And there's less sort of stuff that relies on like a really in-depth knowledge of Dan and Phil lore. And in fact, they open the show with like a recap of the Dan and Phil story through diorama, which is like really cool. But it does also help you like sort of get the concept of the show, even if you're not like the most invested Dan and Phil person.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's really tough. I sort of, because I've sort of now referenced like that we've done this podcast on my own social media, and a bunch of people are like, oh, so you're like a fanny. And I'm like, oh.
No.
Well, no, it's not that I'm not. It's not that I'm not, because I am a fan of Dan and Phil, but to the level of like I didn't probably engage with the fandom stuff on Tumblr, or like I wasn't on Twitter. Like
tough
it's
'cause
just
honestly, maybe they're messaging you not even really being aware of. It's like, and they talk about it in the show, the iceberg concept, where there's like a Dan and Phil fandom, which is like
iceberg.
the top of the iceberg above the sea line, and it looks very normal. But then there's like all this layer of like conspiracy and people looking into their relationship and such.
So, for example, I was familiar with like a couple of those things, but then there was stuff where I was like, sorry, the what? Like I was like, oh, I didn't know fans did this, or I didn't know this was like a... Like they were referencing moments, and they were having fans vote within the show about which one they reveal the secrets to.
Yeah, so just for context, that the segment is there are conspiracies about us, and we will let you, the audience, pick which conspiracy you would like to hear us talk about, and we will tell you whether it's true or false. those conspiracies include in the live taping of the show from memory, the double apartment theory, which was a theory or conspiracy where the fans were like, the second apartment they have in London, they are not filming in their real apartment. They have a filming apartment and they live in a different apartment. And you're like, what are you talking about? How would you notice this?
How did you figure this out?
Why are you doing this? But of course, the joke is that naturally, the conspiracy is true.
Yeah.
And Dan and Phil did have 2 apartments in the same building, one for filming and one in their actual apartment they would live in. They were like, yeah, it's because naturally previously people have like doxed us based on our filming locations in our apartment. So we just wanted to separate like our workspace from our personal space, which
makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a lot of creators, when they get to a certain level, you know,
we say recording from our study.
No, but genuinely,
living.
I think so many creators, like when they get to a point where their business, like of being a creator, is generating enough revenue to justify having like, you know, renting or purchasing a home with like maybe one more room than they actually need, and for that to be a studio or a recording space.
Yep.
Yeah, so many YouTube girlies have the classic filming bedroom. It's not a totally uncommon concept.
And it's like doesn't affect the content at all. Really.
No,
like,
it is funny that they figured that out.
It's like, well, is it funny or is it disturbing?
Yeah, I would
Seems
say
like Dan
a lot
takes it more of the latter, you know?
I think they, and that's really, I think, what a solid amount of this show is kind of addressing or engaging with. And I think a pretty interesting way in that they're being empathetic and understanding of the fans while also still kind of basically disclosing their discomfort with their kind of, you know, some of the 1% of their fandom, and I guess like their relationship to the concept of being Dan and Phil, famous YouTubers. Another conspiracy was the tour bus bed.
Yes.
Conspiracy, which was that on one of their tours, they were on a tour bus and they did, for YouTube Premium, they did like a tour bus tour, or it was like a documentary, and they toured the tour bus and people noticed that there was only one bed on the tour bus. So then people were like, they would be sharing.
So there was one
like,
double
primary
bed at the end, which is actually pretty normal for all tour buses.
Yeah. Normally it's like because there's a pop star or
Taylor
something, and
Swift is
there's
on
one person in the big bedroom, and then crew are, you know, in separate quarters or whatever. So people were doing the conspiracy that obviously they were sharing a bed, which also I think turned out to be
Yes, they
true.
were like, that's true.
But interestingly as well, and this is kind of why I think this tour is sort of almost a prequel to kind of the new era of Dan and Phil, because they talk about similar themes, but again, in this video, they're not like, oh, and we slept in the same bed because XYZ. They're just like, yeah, we did sleep in the same bed.
I think it does make sense because naturally if they had said that before they were out, people would have been like insane about it.
Yeah, of course.
But now it's like, oh, well, okay.
Sorry, to clarify, they've said this after they've come out, but not at this point. They had not disclosed their relationship status. That's why I was like,
yeah.
I hadn't seen this tour recording, and so I have obviously seen the recent developments, and then I went back and watched this tour recording, and I was like, oh, if anyone didn't watch this tour recording, there's a lot of, I think, like themes that are kind of consistent through, you know, that reveal or whatever you want to call it, update video that are present in this show in terms of, and also talking about the hiatus. I actually think that point of the show was really interesting if we want to briefly touch on it.
Sure.
So at one point, Dan goes off stage to do like a costume change or something, and there is a segment where Phil basically has kind of a heart-to-heart with the audience about...
Yeah, Dan actually has his own like heart-to-heart. There's like a serious moment in the show when Phil is taking off his prosthetic nude body.
Muscle man body.
Dan talks about his like stepping away from YouTube and then his eventual like return, and how Phil like sort of helped him be more comfortable with being a public figure. And then you were saying about Phil's similar.
Phil's heart-to-heart is interesting because we never really have, I think, heard from Phil about his POV of what happened during the hiatus, which, by the way, during this show, they repeatedly refer to the hiatus as like a bit where they go to like a echoing megaphone, which I think is very funny. But Phil kind of talks about how the hiatus was actually a personally kind of scary time for him as a creator because their professional careers have become very intertwined. And so with Dan stepping away, Phil was kind of like, well, what do I do now? Because we've been doing Dan and Phil. So now it's just Phil again. And also he was concerned that Dan would not come back and what that would mean for him, which I think is a very genuine fear. And it was like actually quite nice to hear from Phil because I think Dan, obviously Phil has his health concerns, like accidentally eating glue. But and bleeding from orifices. Oh, that poor man. But I think, you know, Dan kind of obviously on his actual like personal channel talks a lot about his like personal like struggles and mental health and, you know, kind of actually has his heart-to-hearts quite often, whereas Phil sort of doesn't as much. He tells them as like humorous story times of like, hey, I had a near-death experience, LOL. But so having a moment with Phil being like, yeah, I was actually like very concerned and like didn't know what like the future of my career and like my life would look like. Yeah, it was, you know, as someone who is a fan, it was like, oh, didn't know that. Good to know. Was wondering kind of in the back of my mind how you felt about that.
That's why it's just such a good show, you know, you get the laughs, get the parody of YouTuber boxing, which plays even better now that that's like dead in the water. You get you get the seriousness, you get the audience interaction. Like it's just a great show.
Yeah, and the song's a banger. Did you like it?
I did like it, yeah.
TRRIBLE. Say it to my face, you want influence me. Banger.
I did like they also were like, yeah, the like the 4 quadrants of our audience. It's girls, gays, geeks, and
I don't know, goths?
yes, goths. Oh,
yeah.
God, wow. Sorry, they're just not goths anymore. I forgot about that's goth erasure. But yeah, that was cute. Okay, that kind of brings us to the big recent development, which we've been obviously referencing in passing through these 3 episodes, and is probably the reason. Well, it is the reason that we decided to do Dan and Phil.
Yeah,
in this part of the podcast,
they were on my list to do always, but this recent development happened, and I was like, you know, obviously as a shirky little YouTuber, I was like, the time is now for the algorithm. But no, on a more serious note, I was like, this is topical. I'm very invested. I was suddenly watching a lot more Dan and Phil content again. But equally, they have been YouTubers for a very long time. Like Phil started like quite near the beginning of YouTube, so it actually makes sense chronologically in the podcast. It's the start of us covering the British YouTubers who are some of my favourites.
yeah. So October 14, 2025.
I remember the day.
Are Dan and Phil in a relationship? ? The truth. It is a 46-minute long video, much in the vein of Daniel's coming out video, his quitting YouTube video. It's like a hybrid video essay, but it's with the 2 of them presenting to camera. And it goes through, basically, the answer is yes, they have been in a relationship the whole time. Yippee, you know. But it goes through, first of all, the fan, like, we can call it a conspiracy, but it was true. So, but basically the fan discussion about their relationship online and how Dan especially, but Phil as well, to some extent, took that as an invasion like of their privacy and how he was struggling with his like internalized homophobia. And so it was really difficult for him to want to like share parts of his life because he was like, oh, it's going to, and he says this in the live show, he's like, oh, it's going to like re-traumatize me. And it is re-traumatizing for me to have all these people discuss my personal life and my gay relationship. So as a result, I'm going to be even more private. And of course, then you're more private. So then the fans become even more conspiratorial minded and they dig even further into it.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just like quite a negative cycle.
I think it's also interesting that they talk about how they had the concern of like a secondary concern about if you start talking about your relationship and kind of, you know, they acknowledge that by acknowledging it, you are opening it up to discussion. And there is the level of like, it's sort of not really any of people's business, but if you are like leveraging it, and I say that very lightly because, you know, just the existence of something isn't necessarily like leveraging it. But if you're leveraging like your relationship and people obviously are very interested in it, you kind of are incentivized to talk about it more or include it more in your content. And thus then your relationship becomes a part of your business. And then that can put pressure on it and be a risk. And also from the fact that they were, you know, Dan and Phil comedians, they didn't want to be like Dan and Phil the boyfriends. And so they wanted that kind of distinction there. I thought that was all really interesting because, yeah, it is a very common pattern of creators, like even two individual creators, like start dating and then their relationship becomes, you know, a cause of more views, more content, things like that. And then if there is a breakdown of that relationship, it's public. And so you're not only dealing with your relationship breaking down, but you're dealing with everyone choosing sides or scrutinizing if you made the wrong decisions in the relationship or trying to find out the reason of that. And that's just like not something you want to do. So that was like a secondary reason that Dan was like, let's not do this. And Phil seemed to also, yeah, be empathetic to and agree.
Yeah, and they are, and this, it's like one of the reasons I think we really like Dan and Phil content is that they are agree that they're not blameless in the situation, and they're like naturally our approach to it, like there was like a Streisand effect where the hiding it did encourage the more nefarious elements of the fandom. But they also say, well, like, of our fans, like 90% of them are completely normal Dan and Phil fans. There's only a very small minority of people who are really like obsessed with our relationship status.
They're unhinged.
Do you have any examples of the unhingedness besides, I like the one where they rebuilt their apartment in Roblox, like with incredible precision. Yeah,
that one kind of, I think, straddles the border between like disturbing and funny because they made content about that. But I think they talked about how, yeah, people found their like apartment address and stuff like that. But I think even
sorry, it wasn't just that the apartment was created in Roblox. They did the video about that, but they didn't talk about it in the video at the time. But they talked about it, I believe, in this video, is that the outside of the apartment was also perfectly replicated because it was a result of their address being doxed, so people knew exactly where they lived.
Yeah, so they were replicating like the shop across the road and stuff like that, which is like, we're laughing because it's like but it's unhinged. Like that's crazy behavior. I think of, and you know, if they didn't acknowledge it in this video, I wouldn't have probably spoken about it, but they acknowledged the infamous Valentine's video, which, yeah, as I was sort of saying before, there was a point like many years ago where I like came across this. I think it was on Tumblr and I was like, what is this? You know, and keep in mind, I was probably like, I don't know, 17. I was younger. This was a long time ago, I remember. But I remember I was like, what is this? I'd never heard of it. And I kind of went down, that was, you know, people had this video. They talk about it in Dan and Phil's like video. So you can go watch that if you want the context. But essentially it was this video that Phil made for Dan very early on into their relationship that through a YouTube bug became unprivated. It was like a unlisted private video that went public for a day, and then a bunch of people downloaded it and were like essentially blackmailing them that they were going to release it or refuse to take down their re-upload of it, which is just like, it's just cooked. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just think some things are just so unhinged. So I remember I saw it and then I almost like gave myself the ick. Like I saw it and I was like, I'm not meant to be seeing this. Like, this isn't for me. I need to, I was like, as I sort of, you know, curiously was like, what is this? I remember I sort of went through that thread and then I was like, this is unhinged behavior that people are like documenting this in a conspiratorial way. And not only that, but feeling the need to be like, people need to know about this. It's like, do we need to know about this? Like, does this need to be like a widespread?
The thing I find really unique is that the level of like fact finding and like proving and like fan evidence is something that normally is like the remit of like snark communities. It's
Yeah.
communities that actively are maybe not hostile, but have an opposition to the creator,
Yeah.
and thus they do all this stuff to like basically be like, what's going on? Whereas a lot of these people, I think if you ask them, oh, do you like Dan and Phil? They'd be like, yes, I'm among their most dedicated fans.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it
Harder for them to criticize, I think.
well, but I think that's what makes it uncomfortable because even actually since Dan and Phil have like released this video and said, yep, we've actually been in a relationship this whole time, and they've sort of addressed a few things. And as more content has come out, they are kind of almost sprinkling in like lore or like filling in the gaps of, oh, by the way, actually when this happened, this was what was actually happening, like that kind of thing, which as a longtime fan is like enjoyable because it's like it feels like it's their choice to share that with us, and it's like, oh, that's like an Easter egg, right? But I don't like that some fans are being like, oh, like I was right all along and I was like conspiracy theorying and I was like, you know, doing all this stuff on Tumblr and I was on Twitter and they called me crazy, but I was right. And I'm like, well, no, actually you're telling on yourself because you like, okay, sure. You could be like, I think maybe there's something going on here, right? And they even address that in the video where they're like, we're two adult men who have bought a house together. Like we don't think people are crazy for at least being like, well, that doesn't seem like something that you would just do with a pal necessarily. Right? But people who are kind of almost just like outing themselves as being a member of that more unhinged 1% who were like felt the need to pressure Dan and Phil into telling the truth, or like I just don't understand that from but equally they say these fans were oftentimes children.
Yeah.
So, you know, they kind of have sort of said they've made their peace with it or they've sort of forgiven them for that. The police are coming to get the fans.
I actually, the way that they framed the like, or there are going to be people who are being like, well, I knew all along, and like the back patting that sort of like suggests like, oh, I was in the know, and they're like, well, okay, like there's no prize for knowing, like isn't it obvious? It was just like we didn't want to talk about it because it's not your business.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Even before I watched that, I came to this with the perspective of, well, yeah, watching this, like, sorry, you guys, like, you didn't know they were gay. Like, and I had that viewpoint. And so watching this, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I was actually, it's quite a lazy way to approach. And now, of course, I have a lot more context because I know all the reasons that they kept it secret. I know, like, the difficulty that especially Dan had with the people discussing the relationship
I remember
online.
before we started this kind of trilogy of episodes, you were like, hey, there was big news today. Aren't these YouTubers you watch? And you were aware of the news. And I was like, yeah, this is a big deal. And you were like, but why is it a big deal? Didn't everyone just know that? And I was like, well, it's not quite like that.
And it's interesting because I was like, okay, so there are celebrities that don't discuss their relationship. I'm speaking specifically about actors a lot of the time because they do a lot of press. Paul Mescal, obviously, our king. But like people will be like,
or musicians.
Are you in a relationship with Gracie Abrams? And he'll just be like, what is love? This film that I'm promoting is really about love.
They just
and
choose
everyone
not to
experiences it. Yeah. So, but you can still see him clapping like a seal at her concert, right? Like they still publicly perform romance. Whereas Dan and Phil were like, oh, we like wouldn't tell like our close friends, or like we wouldn't do like work where we like couldn't maintain like the perception that we were not a couple.
Haven't been to a restaurant and had like a romantic, like sitting across from each other dinner.
Yes. And that I'm like, that is that's different. That's another level.
Yeah.
And like, it's very sad that I think it's personally sad that was the case, but luckily we're coming from this from the perspective that their relationship is now public and they can do those things if they wish.
Yeah. Like go in the London Eye and do the romance experience on the London Eye.
Yeah. And it's a thing where, and naturally, through this podcast, I'm like, well, you know, it's a podcast, so like we have opinions on things, and there's an extent to the there's a viewpoint where they're like, oh, well, if you don't have the personal lived experience of this person, then can you really give an opinion on things? And I'm like, oh, well, we kind of have to. It's a podcast. It's how it works. But this is something where I'm like, oh, like I and you, of course, as well. Like we can't really understand or ever will understand what it's like to have been in Dan or Phil's position. So why I'm like, oh, it's interesting that they didn't even feel that they could privately be in a relationship
with like their closer circles. Yeah.
I can't really comment or say anything towards that because it's like I just don't know what it was like to be them. To be honest,
I think they explained quite like I think the way they detailed and really kind of distilled what is probably like a decade of speculation and rumors and fame and kind of how that has influenced their mental health and their relationship and everything into like 146 video is like super impressive. It's a really good video. But yeah, I definitely, it's a pretty crazy situation. And I think they offer a lot of grace to their fans who I think behaved badly. But equally, like, yeah, as I was saying before, I was like, I think, and there are still some people who I'm seeing kind of like a sentiment where I'm like, you guys are really like, it's like the point is there and you've just like flown right past it. Like, I'm like, they're talking about you actually, but you know, but I think kind of whatever the feelings are on that, I'm like, that's not my mantle to take up. If they're saying that they're like, we've just sort of made peace with it and we are moving on and moving forward, I'm like, yeah, cool. I'm just happy for them. I'm like, there's a parasocial amount of happiness that I have felt for these two men who now can like publicly be.
Yeah, do you think the learning from this, do you think that anyone can be a YouTuber / influencer, basically a content creator with a direct relationship to their audience and do lifestyle content and not reveal their relationship? I kind of think it's impossible. I kind of think even if your partner's not doing content with you, like these guys are,
I think
people will just find out.
Yeah, I actually think that's the case. I think you can try and you can definitely keep things on the down low. Like, obviously, I think I'm going to editorialize if you don't mind. Like, most people know we're dating. Guys, you heard it here first. We're actually in a relationship. This is our Dan and Phil relationship. Why are you looking like that? We're together, but equally, like, the amount at which you include something, like, you're not in every video I make, right?
Oh, I'm in like less than 1%.
Yes.
By choice.
So yeah, exactly. And that's so, like, that is your choice. And I like absolutely am like,
well, no, it's also your choice. Like, you don't want me in your content. We're not a couple influencer.
No,
like, what?
I know. And I'm not gonna force you to do something that's like not your gig, not your bag. But you know, I guess what I'm getting at is if you, I can, like, the 95% of my audience, like, there's a good chance that a casual viewer of mine would not know that I have a boyfriend and it's you.
Yes.
Right? But someone who watches all of my videos would know who you are. And that has happened. We have met someone in the wild and I've been like, oh, hi, you know, I'm listening and this is my boyfriend Max. And they're basically like, I know who you are. It's like pre-podcast, people kind of know who you are, you know, as per my content.
That's like a fan introduction backfire. Because like, and off topic, but you've been recognized recently. And it's a case where, like, you might be talking to a fan and I'm, like, around and I'm like, well, you know, like, it's they're a fan of Lucy. They're not a fan of Rewind Time. Shout out if you are. But then it's like, well, if you're like, oh, yeah, hey, X person X, and here's my boyfriend Max. Max, this is X. And then they hit you with the, oh, I know who he is. You're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just fucking myself. No.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is that if you really don't want to have something come up in your content, you can choose to, like, you can keep as much stuff as you want private, but people will, if it's there, they'll find it if they really, really want to. Like, I don't say, like, you know, certain details of my personal life, but if someone really wanted to find them, they probably could. And I kind of have, like, made my peace with that. I guess. Or at least I am at a point where I'm like, oh, if like I don't think I have that many people who have. I have actually had an occasion where someone has sort of been like, I think you live here. And I've been like, not sure if I love that you've like pinned down my location or are like speculating about where I live. Like that's a bit uncomfortable. Like, sorry, I'm being like specific. Like we're talking like they're like, I think you live here. And I was like, okay. But yeah, I think most creators and influencers, especially of like a larger scale, pretty much if there's a space where people discuss you for any reason, they'll discuss whatever there is to discuss. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's interesting because like I think in like conventional show business, you wouldn't want a husband and wife couple if it can be avoided, or even a dating couple, because it just causes it makes the prospect of working together very awkward, you know? Same as like in any workplace really. Like a lot of office romance is discouraged because it creates like HR drama. But it does makes me think that it would be crazy to listen to or consume content from like two people and then to have them 10 years in be like, we're in a relationship. Like if you're a casual Dan and Phil, and I'm trying to like think of if anyone didn't put it together,
Or didn't
it would be
at least
huge.
wonder or this was big news for me. I actually was like genuinely, and again, it's not like I'd never been like, oh, I wonder if like, that, it's not about that. It's more that I was like, they gave us like the information that they wanted to give us. And I was just like, it's not up to me to.
Or if you're like a lapsed fan from the quote unquote straight era and you never even heard that they were gay, it would be crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think there's, and I saw a lot of comments throughout our watch of the 3 episodes where there are a lot of people returning to old videos and being like, wow, this video obviously hits different or has a different vibe, which Dan and Phil also have been like, yeah, like obviously me tackling him in our first video we recorded together or like nuzzling into his like shoulder is like very, very like now that we know for sure. But that's the thing. Some people are taking it like like I was right. Whereas I take it as well, now it feels different and like nice to know kind of thing. You just pointed out a comment.
The comments on the video are very funny.
Their announcement video. Yeah.
And I can't read them because some of them are quite explicit, but yeah.
Someone expresses that they're glad that their life is they decided not to end their own life.
In Minecraft.
But
they do it in a more plain way. Very funny.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's very funny. But the fans have matured, which they acknowledge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have, because I believe this video is actually used to promote, in classic Dan and Phil sense, you use your big attention-getting sort of announcement video, your attention-getting, like, what's happening with me video to launch a new concept on YouTube. And this is the
podcast.
The launch of the Dan and Phil podcast called Hard Launch, which coincidentally is them also hard launching their relationship.
Yeah.
And it's a weekly video podcast coming for our bag. Hey.
I know.
But all YouTubers, celebrities, everyone wants a podcast now.
We're moved down the totem pole of people in a relationship yapping at a camera. But we go one more down the rung. But let me know what you think. I love their podcast.
Okay, so
I really like it.
I have also listened to all the episodes of the podcast. You watch a lot of YouTube. To counter that, I'm somewhat of a millennial, obviously, so I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
All right? And so when Dan and Phil were like, oh, we can do a podcast, I was like, oh, this is great, because like having watched all this Dan and Phil content, I'm like, oh, I'm a Dan and Phil fan. Like, I will engage in Dan and Phil content. But I'm not going to watch them play games, and I'm not going to probably watch their solo YouTube content unless it's like a vlog. So when they're like, oh, I'm doing a podcast, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, great. I'll listen. That's something I will listen to.
Yeah.
And yeah, so far I think it's been like pretty good. Like it has naturally a lot of Dan and Phil, like their comedic dynamic, their back and forth. It is a bit scattershot at the moment. They're sort of figuring out what it's going to be, but they have a random topic gotcha machine that spits out their topics that they use if it's really like not much going on. But I would be quite happy now that they're in their outside era, which we'll talk about. I would be quite happy with a 40-minute weekly show where they can talk about going to, you know, the movie premiere and seeing Oscar Isaacs and getting press photos, you know? They live a pretty interesting life. So it's like...
They already have a built-in group of fans who will listen to anything they do, and that's not to discredit the podcast, but it just means that, you know, they kind of can figure it out and people will still enjoy it in the process. I'm one of those people. I don't really mind what the format is because I'm just enjoying more back and forth of Dan and Phil and kind of in a different format.
It's getting a bit where I'm like, okay, we can stop being retrospective about the Dan and Phil lore, but I know that there are a lot of longtime fans who want additional context for things that happened in the past. But I'm averse to nostalgia, so and I'm a new fan, so I'm kind of like, well, I don't really care. We've done that. Come on, boys, we reacted to these videos before.
I don't know if I agree because I actually think for them it would also be a case of like, I don't know. I'm only guessing, but there's maybe a level of like catharsis or like, oh, we can finally talk about this. Yeah. Like, so they're probably feeling like, oh yeah, that thing that went really weird, but we couldn't explain like what happened there because otherwise it would, you know, reveal X, Y, Z. They can kind of talk about now, and I think that's really nice. But also the vibe shift again. We kind of talked about how there's a vibe shift post their coming out. I believe there's been another vibe shift where they're being like, I think they're sort of, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but the content is extremely funny. And I think it's because they are not trying to hold back from maybe their like letting their dynamic feel too coupley, because there's sort of like a bit more of an element of like long-term relationship banter. Do you know what I mean?
I think it was kind of there on Terrible Influence.
Oh yeah.
I just think that it's just another case of they don't have to self-censor. And so, yeah, it does feel more natural as a result. And that's what I like enjoy about it. So I don't necessarily think it's like more funny, probably maybe more funny to us because we're also in a long-term relationship.
Oh my gosh.
So just couple things.
Hashtag just couple things. Yeah, right.
But yeah, speaking of couple things, so like we do now get full couple dating videos on the main Dan and Phil channel, which we should note.
A new day in the life dropped.
The channel is now just called Dan and Phil. So they've scrapped the games thing, which is probably, it's about time, you know. They
still do game content. They did some for Spooky Week.
But like from like we said, like as a casual like me, I'm like, where do I go for my Dan and Phil content? I'm thinking Dan and Phil games. Is that the spin-off?
They're branching out. I think they primarily used to do like gaming content with some like lifestyle-y type content, but now it's like a mix.
Yeah, so we have the video which after some A/B testing with the title is now just called Our Anniversary London Adventure, quote, with a rat, unquote. And basically the premise of this video is they put a rat on a map of the city of London and then they go to the places that the rat crawls to eat treats. Naturally, you're like, what the heck? Like, what is that? And it is
I'm obsessed with this concept.
Yeah, you're like, what? That is not like Dan and Phil content. Like, I'm sorry, that's not shot in a bedroom.
This is a new format.
Yeah, but it is kind of like a day in the life of Phil and Dan, the content that I kind of really enjoyed. And so, yeah, we do get to watch them go on what is like basically a date and go through London. Yeah, you really like this video.
I love this video because it's basically all the stuff that made their other vlogs good. But again, there's less of that. Like, they're acknowledging that rather than just being like, we're just two pals having lunch. We're just two pals having our cute little, you know, coffee date.
High tea.
Yeah, no, they're literally just being like, we're on a date. And it's also quite cute because they, again, I think, and again, maybe I'm like, sorry guys, maybe I'm being a bit parasocial, but like they seem quite, like there's almost like a weight being lifted off them where they're like, we don't have to be concerned about how this is being perceived. they're like, we're on a date. How fun. We haven't done this before. Like there's kind of a novelty aspect to it. There's also a point where when they go on the London Eye, the team at the London Eye know who Dan and Phil are and like basically put them in the romance pod. An extremely funny thing because they put them in the fancy one with the picnic and the chocolate and the champagne and they're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
But then it's revealed as they're like kind of vlogging and going, up over the river and looking over the Thames and they're like, wow, what a romantic thing. And then they do a shot, like a selfie kind of shot back towards Dan and Phil. And you see that the London Eye people are still in the pod with them. Like they didn't leave them to go.
If you guys don't know, the London Eye, like it's huge,
It's a
right?
Ferris wheel. It's a big Ferris wheel.
And it doesn't stop. So you get on and disembark. And because there's so many pods, like it can't stop. Otherwise everyone will be stuck on it for like over an hour. So it's always going. So they presumably didn't brief Dan and Phil on the deal, got on the pod with them at the beginning and were like, here's the champagne, happy anniversary.
We don't know
do
exactly
your date.
what happened.
There's no reason.
We as the audience
Yeah.
presume that they go, here's the nice pod that we've set up.
Well, we as marketing people presume that if Dan and Phil were like, we're coming on an anniversary date, can we
would
go
do
on the
something.
London Eye?
Yeah, we would do something extra.
We would talk to them at the base of the eye, go,
And we'd be
we've
like,
got you this, we've hooked you
surprise.
up. We probably would have done it over email.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they would have come and we've been like, what's up, Dan and Phil? Can we get
We
a
might
selfie?
ask to take a selfie or take a picture
Yep.
of them for our social media, whatever. And then we would go back into the
Yeah.
office and let them go on
the pod and make content.
Or we'd stay, in case something goes wrong.
It's
but we'd let them
the
go on.
London Eye.
No,
If it
I'm
goes
just
wrong,
hey,
they're
just
dead.
from okay, but you know what I mean. Like let them go on their pod
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
alone, and then when they come out, go thanks so much for coming, guys. Bye bye. Whatever. But no, they're inside the pod with them as Dan and Phil are drinking champagne. I don't know. Maybe Dan and Phil were just like, oh, do you want to come with us? Like, who knows? I just thought it was funny because I didn't notice it on my initial watch because I was like, I think doing my makeup or something while I was watching it. So I missed the like split second clip.
Yep.
And then when I watched it, I saw it in the comments, like people being like, it's so funny the London Eye people were in the pod. And I went, what? And I went back and watched it and I was like, that is so
It was
funny.
when I was watching it. I was,
Yeah.
Because I was watching on the TV, so it's like
Yeah, you were.
primary screen.
Yeah.
And I was seeing them there just being like, oh,
Why are they?
But yeah,
I love that
it's
video.
It's a really fun video.
I would love to see. I assume the way they did it that they would potentially do it again as like a repeat concept because they didn't hit up every part of London on the map, but who knows. And then there's been some other videos as well.
You were suggesting that the editing style has shifted on the channel, and I was looking. They do credit their editor.
Really?
He's on YouTube under Casual Guy.
Okay,
and
cool.
he has a little YouTube channel where he talks about gaming. Does like video essays, and I don't know if you want to say your thoughts on the style. It is kind of like Dan's solo content when he returned to YouTube with a crew. It's noticeably professional.
It's
is what
just
I'd
a
say.
bit more, and like, there's only so much. Editing is so time consuming. So a professional
Yeah.
editor can just do more with a piece of content in the same amount of like time that a self-taught typical YouTuber probably can.
There's a reason it used to be a fully like professional job before we just had to do everything ourselves,
Yeah, but I think it's not. It still has that same DNA and essence of Dan and Phil content. And maybe there was like more recent games content that I just like I'm not as familiar with that also had the same editor or same editing style. I just think it's like a little bit more professional, a bit like there's just extra graphics, there's extra edits, there's some like green screen kind of like there's sort of editing jokes and stuff that I just think
podcast also has that, yeah.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you only get it obviously if you're a video viewer. So I miss it sadly.
shout out to the YouTube podcast audience.
Yeah, I'm an audio only pleb. But like video podcast on YouTube, it's kind of where the platform is going. YouTube. Podcasting as a platform because the algorithm is so good. But yeah, when you watch the podcast on YouTube, they're doing cut-ins. They're showing clips of old videos when they talk about them. So it's probably the best way to do it if you like video podcasts. But yeah, otherwise we are up to date on the podcast. I did recently watch with you. They have a series of videos where they react to like fan Twitter, as in PH fan Twitter. And so there's a lot of memes, and that I think is quite endearing and good for us to get a sense of like what the fandom's into, Dan and Phil's reaction to it. They do as well. They watch each other's respective like vertical social media video feeds, so TikTok and IG Reels.
How do you feel about that, given that we have this routine of doing this maybe every other night, or if not every night?
No. We send each other memes on TikTok.
Yeah, we send each other TikToks
and then watch them together.
We watch them together.
Whereas Dan and Phil just scroll each other's feed. And this for me was, I was like, oh, this is kind of slop. Not in that it's bad. If you enjoy it, it's fine. But I was like, oh, I'm kind of just watching TikTok, but I'm watching someone else's. It's kind of react content. And it's not bad because TikTok is kind of different. It's not like watching a documentary and not reacting to it. But I'm like, okay, this is not really for me. But I don't really need to see Dan's social media.
You didn't like it when we watched it, Jenna Marbles doing it with Julian, where they showed each other their TikTok likes. Either you just don't like this format of content at all. I don't mind watching. If I'm a fan of someone, I think it's kind of interesting to see what their TikTok, like, I get it from as a fan.
That's the only thing where I'd be like, oh yeah, like it's really, algorithms put you in your own content bubble, and it's interesting to see what other people get on their feed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, oh, well, the whole point and why the algorithm is so good is it gives me the content that I want to see.
Yeah, right.
And now I'm just watching content that is for someone else.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, but hey, that's just like one tiny little series that will probably, we know how it is when you're a YouTuber. Like, you got to have the videos that are not filler, but the low effort to plug the gaps while you work on the big products.
The YouTube Studio, YouTube itself has like a module that it runs you through on the back end on the Creator Studio, where it basically tells you, hey, in order for you to have a healthy relationship with being a creator, you need to do a combination of really high effort, like blockbuster kind of videos where you're like, maybe this takes me more time, but it's going to be really, really pop off, and videos that are lower effort and easier for you to produce that will also still like connect with your fans or your core audience. So,
Okay, that brings us finally to modern day, present Dan and Phil, and an opportunity for us to either tie off any loose ends you wanted to talk about or give our overall perception, what we took from this, where to go to next. I can kick off if you're thinking.
I mean, from my perspective, I feel like I've shared quite a bit about like my experience having watched Dan and Phil for like a decade plus, I think. And I just really, my overarching takeaway is that even though there have been, some interesting moments with, and like a relationship with their fandom, I like, however our thinking on this, I'm just actually, this maybe sounds a bit sappy, I'm just like genuinely very happy for them that they feel that this is like the move for them and that they're happy to be in the place that they're at now. And I'm
parasocial.
I understand.
You got parasocialed.
I just got parasocial.
Parasocial W.
But parasocial relationship is
not a bad thing, to be honest.
Well, no, but it's not two-way in like the level of knowing each other, but it's two-way in that it's beneficial to the creators as well. They wouldn't be able to go, like, no creator can do world tours or really make money if their viewers aren't invested in them to some degree, right? So I guess just in a respectful, not freaky way, I hope, I'm like happy that they're happy. And that's like kind of all that anyone can ask for. And I'm very excited for this new era of content. I'm really enjoying Dan and Phil being outside because it's not something we've gotten a lot of in the last decade. So I'm really enjoying the vlog kind of content. I really like the podcast. And yeah, even though we're not owed more of a glimpse into their life, I do feel that it's a positive shift for them in terms of them being able to be more authentically themselves and not have to like overthink how they're presenting themselves while they're doing their job.
Yeah.
But I want to know what you have thought kind of
I think we should just mention, we didn't when we talked about it, that the podcast actually has a Patreon.
Oh,
so if you're not familiar with Patreon, it is probably the default method that creators monetize podcasts in that it allows the subscribers to directly contribute, normally weekly, for like bonus content, extra episodes, that type of thing. And the Dan and Phil Patreon, I think they haven't had a YouTube membership or a similar thing previously, as far as I know,
I don't
right?
think
They never
so.
promoted it when we've been watching videos.
I don't think so, no.
So this is like obviously a different way for them to be like directly supported by their audience, and like it mitigates like any concerns they would have about censorship or demonetization on YouTube, and also just monetization on YouTube is just unreliable, generally. Like if Dragon City isn't coming with the check, like I might not have a sponsor for the video.
It's diversification as well.
Exactly. And a lot of fans, I think, will just feel better about giving the money to a creator they really like directly, rather than having to sit through like a sponsorship for a product that maybe doesn't, isn't relevant to them, or maybe not even, like a lot of sponsorships, like we're in Australia, it's like you watch it and it's for a product, you're like, well, I can't buy this, like I'm not American, like it's not that helpful. Whereas Patreon, it's like obviously different in that way.
I did see there was some backlash around this, which was kind of, I just don't, like, here's the thing, guys, I don't know, you don't have to, you are not owed every piece of Dan and Phil content.
I saw the same backlash, but it was backlash to backlash, where people were like, why are people upset about the Patreon? Dan and Phil should get paid for doing their work. And then I was like, oh, who's upset about it? And then I couldn't really find anyone actually upset about this.
I would imagine that there would be a larger proportion of their fans who would be annoyed with people being upset about a Patreon than the amount of people actually upset about the Patreon. But I do agree with that sentiment. Like, when people are upset, like...
You've made content... Phil has made content for 20 years, and now he's asking you to support him, and you're like, well, isn't that rich?
I also think there are, there's lots of different ways to, do additional content and like do patrons and things like that. And the way they've set it up is like there's a free tier and then there's like a paid tier, but you still get so much content for free. I think that's always my thing. If they're not being like, oh, well, actually the podcast is only for paid members, but we've done the first few episodes for free, but now we're taking it away from you. They're not taking away anything that people already had. And that's, I think, just the general rule of thumb. Don't take away something that people had for free. Watch your studios. Like, that's when I think backlash can be justified, because it's like, also, like, I've had this thing and now you just want to put it behind a paywall. They're not really doing that. They're literally just doing more stuff that you can have if you want, which you don't have to. I do not pay for the Patreon at this current time. And I'm like, wow, I have so much Dan and Phil content.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Other random thoughts I just have from podcast notes. Sprinkle of glitter, still shouting out Louise.
Diva.
Go off. Best friend of the channel. Funny Phil, there was a prompt where they're like, YouTuber that you like want to be friends with / marry, whatever. And he was like, oh, Anthony from Smosh, but in a friend way, which is funny because he's obviously been around the channel, all three of them, when we've spoken about it over the years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that the series we've done here has been really enjoyable for me personally, because I would describe a lot of the creators that we have covered, they have been interesting from the perspective of us, like looking at YouTube and how the platform developed, but they have not been creators that I personally have liked their content or
That's
would
fair.
watch it, and that's the thing where I'm like, oh, okay, it kind of makes sense that I wasn't a big YouTuber, a big person or consumer of YouTube. What do you call a YouTube fan or a YouTuber? No, I don't even know. I don't really have a word for it. But I wasn't a big subscriber, say that.
You weren't big into YouTube.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, the content just doesn't resonate with me, that is. And now, as we go through this series, there have been like more channels where I'm like, oh, I actually quite enjoy this. I'm thinking of like Bo Burnham stuff. I'm thinking of Trisha Paytas, ironically. I'm thinking about... I was going to say one, but I won't say it because I'll be cancelled. And so Dan and Phil is like a sort of a nice insight into what the future of this podcast will be, and especially given we're going to be tackling the Brick Crew relatively soon. I'm like, I wonder if it's just a cultural thing. I wonder if it's just like can't connect to Americans. too foreign.
Do you think if you knew about Dan and Phil, like 10 years ago, you'd watch their content? Or do you think you just appreciate it now?
It's a good question. I don't know if I would watch it just because I don't watch this style of YouTube video. Maybe I would because when I was younger, I would have had more reason to be like, what are people playing? Like, what video games are people playing? Like, it'd be a video game discovery thing, Dan and Phil Games, that is. The comedy stuff, I probably wouldn't have gotten around. But, like, I certainly like their comedic sensibility and I like the new podcast a lot because it distills it in a way that I like consume, you know, and I like their vlogs. So maybe I would have watched it. It just wasn't like the main stuff they were putting out, you know?
Didn't have being able to share Dan and Phil content with my boyfriend on my relationship bingo card. If you told me like 10 years ago that I would get to, like, now we can watch Dan and Phil content and you're like, I know who these people are. Great outcome of this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's also a thing where it's like, oh, you like people that you're similar to? And I'm like, well, yeah. Sorry, I'm being
we
lazy.
should say
like,
who's the Dan and who's the Phil.
I'm obviously the Dan.
Right, okay.
Yeah, come on.
Well, see, the only thing is there's a Philism that I think you do, which
What
is
is
just
it?
like you do the like, you just like say, you just do the say anything kind of vibe. I'll just be like doing something and you'll just be like, what if X, Y, Z, which is very Phil core.
Yeah, I mean...
Everyone has a bit of Dan and Phil inside them.
I think even on the podcast today, Dan was like, yeah, when we went to see One Battle After Another, which
we went and
yeah,
saw.
Dan was like, I will always shush people in the cinema if they're being noisy. And that is something that I basically will always take the opportunity to do. And maybe now I do it less because I'm like, what's even the point? Like, it's like you can't even beat it. Why do I even pay this money to go to the cinema? But in my younger days, I would just be like, hi, can you please be quiet? Or even just shush.
No, you've done it. I've been there and I've almost like recoiled into my skin. You're right. But I just am not a person who would, it'd be very rare for me to say something. But you fully would just be like.
It's because we're both boys that are motivated by an intense internal sense of justice.
We're both boys.
Me and Dan.
Oh.
You know, he wanted to go to law school. I did the same, thinking that, you know, it's because there's a right and wrong. So, you know, similar in that sense. Anyway, okay, Dan and Phil. Wow. What a journey. 3 episodes. Who knows? Maybe they'll get a 4th if the content does another massive shift.
If they've
spent 20 years.
If they come on tour again, we'll go.
Oh, 100%.
We'll go. Dan and Phil, if you would like to be friends of the pod, come to Australia, sit on our couch that you guys will probably be too tall for.
100%. The crazy thing is that finally the merch for Dan and Phil is so wide in terms of you can be a Dan solo merch buyer. You can buy a Phil solo merch buyer. You can buy merch for each of the tours. You can buy the book. And so, you know, they got the bag. Like, it's pretty smart.
Yeah.
If you look at YouTuber merch, which I may have been casually, this is on the second-hand market, which I may casually have some alerts for because I think it would be a novelty thing to wear it on the podcast. A lot of Dan and Phil stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there is.
In fact, I even found one in Lost Property in like 2018.
At a job you worked at. You tried to.
I was like, you like YouTube.
You said, you like YouTube. Do you know Dan and Phil? But it was like, it was.
I actually think, I was like, I think your friend Tasha likes them.
Shout out to Tasha, bestie of the pod.
Yeah.
But I was like, we don't. This was the thing, and I'm not.
You're like, I like them, but I don't want to wear their merch.
I was like, I like them, but I don't want to wear a T-shirt which says like, the amazing
introverts.
tour is not on fire. I was like,
it was their interactive introverts, big red, then Dan and Phil tour, jumper, XL,
and like slay. But I'm not a merch.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
I'm not a big merch person, but I appreciate it.
I'm struggling as well because a lot of the Dan and Phil merch being sold is in children's sizes. That's I can't fit into it. But I'm when. If you guys have any medium and up, put it on Depop. I'll buy it off you. All right, that is part 3. Dan and Phil brackets games close brackets. As we do at the end of each week, Lucy, what are you subscribing to this week?
Ooh. I am subscribing to Momo Art Mart.
Whoa, what's that?
That is an event that is in Sydney, but I think they also hold it in other locations around Australia. They do it a couple of times a year. And it is a local, like, art market.
Yep.
It's exactly what it sounds like. There's, like, arts, there's crafts. It's also, like, stickers and keychains and artworks. It's really cool. But I would say Momo Art Mart specifically has a very, like, cute, like, kawaii kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
We went to one together,
Okay, cool.
like 6 or something months ago. We went to the last one, and then I went to one with my friend on the weekend, and there was just so much cute stuff, and the vibe was really good. And I just have such respect for people who can draw or do art of any kind. That is
Artists.
artists. Yeah. Creators.
You're a
Creatives.
creator, though.
Yeah, I am.
You mean traditional artists?
I mean people who can, like, draw something really cute. I got my friend and I got a custom, like, portrait of us drawn as bunny rabbits, and I nearly cried. It's, like, one of the cutest things I've ever seen in my life. And I don't know. It's such a good place to go and buy gifts for people because you're kind of giving back. Like, it's like small business vibes. I don't know. I really loved it. I had a really good time. How about you? What are you subscribing to?
I am subscribing to Oasis Live 25, which
Wow.
I went to last week.
Oh my
on
God.
Friday.
Did you go to Oasis?
It was a gift for my father's 60th birthday. And I was like, what better way to understand the mind of British millennials than to go to the mecca of English people in Sydney, which is the Oasis reunion show. So, of course, I went along and saw a lot of geezers. Probably not a lot of Dan and Phil fans, if I'm being real. I probably confused my demographics a bit. It was a lot of...
Yeah, different part of the UK.
Yeah, it was a lot of, like, guys that were quite bald, very tall, muscly, with, like, what looked like broken noses, and then their very petite blonde girlfriends. And I was like, oh, okay. I miss... My research was not done here, but there's a very extended way to say, no, I went to the concert. It was really good. Love some 90s Oasis. They performed all the hits.
Wonderwall.
Sydney Olympic Park hadn't been there since the Olympics, which was a long time ago. Hasn't changed much, but nice to see. You know, you went to twice actually quite recently. Same
Oh,
venue.
yeah. That could have been a subscription as well. But yeah, I did go to the Twice concert, which was the other stadium, but in the same park.
Yeah.
Kudos Bank Arena. Kudos Bank Arena.
So yeah, that was my subscription for this week.
Wow.
Cool. Thank you everyone for all your feedback on all of the episodes on Dan and Phil. It's been really good
thank
to
you so much.
read all your feedback and respond. And again, sorry for our tardiness on releasing this episode. I do think, much like the YouTubers we cover, the weekly commitment, we're not as top of it as we can be. Things can get in the way.
We've had periods where we've been pretty on top of it, but there's just been some recent events that have just thrown us through a little bit of a loop. I was quite unwell.
You also have a lot of work going on.
I have a lot of work
coming
going
up to Black
on.
Friday, Christmas.
Hashtag YouTuber life. No, it's just a very busy period for content creators, and also content creating is not my only job, so I have a couple jobs going, and everyone's busy. It's the silly season.
This is a weekly-ish podcast. Officially,
we strive for it to be weekly, but in advance, like perhaps in future we'll be better about giving
I'll do
notice.
The community post, yeah.
Do the community post about if we're going to take a break. Like maybe we'll have some time off over Christmas as a treat.
Will.
Yay! Thank you.
All right, cool. I'm like, yes, Christmas leave. Daddy approves.
Not daddy. But also, if you have been enjoying the Dan and Phil episodes, if you are new to the podcast, if you would care to take a gander back at some of our other episodes on other YouTubers, if you do watch YouTubers other than Dan and Phil, Trisha Paytas, Shane Dawson, Smosh, some of the people we talked about in this trilogy we have covered on the podcast. So take a look back at those if you will. And if you have enjoyed this trilogy, I hope you will stay tuned for future episodes. Planning doing the Brick Crew, all the big YouTubers. Dramageddon isn't close, but it is definitely on the horizon. We will cover Dramageddon. I'm so excited. But if you have been enjoying these episodes, if you could rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that would be really great. But even just your views and your kind comments are just so fantastic. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast and supporting us.
All right. Okay, we will see you next week for another episode of Rewind Time.
Bye.
Bye.
Ah, oh, that's hot. That's hot.